Okay, so today's video is all about incubating eggs. I'm going to make a follow-up video about raising chicks starting at 1 day old, whether you incubate your own or you go buy them from a retailer like Tractor Supply or local source. So if you're not looking to incubate your own eggs, you might want to jump ahead to the next video right now. But for now, let's talk about incubators. So I have 2 incubators behind me, and the reason being is that we incubate hundreds of eggs a year. We have a small farm called Tallow Acres, and we need to be able to incubate eggs with multiple hatch dates. And that requires either a large cabinet incubator, which we don't have, or you need 2 incubators so you can move eggs from one to the other as they reach the lockdown phase of incubation. So on this side, I have a Brincy Ovation EX56. This retails for about $450. So it is a very expensive incubator, and it's at the higher end of the tabletop incubator price range. You're getting very close to cabinet size incubators once you get up into this price range. On this side, I have a Farm Innovations 4250, which retails for between $100 and $150. I've seen it anywhere in that price range based on sales and where you buy it from. I bought this particular one from Tractor Supply on sale, so I think I paid about $120 for it. So like I said, the reason I have 2 incubators is because I do incubate eggs with multiple hatch dates. I'm constantly adding eggs here with dates written on them, and then I'm constantly moving eggs from this incubator over into lockdown, which is what I use this incubator for. So as far as this incubator goes, I don't want to do a full review, but I would say that if I had to spend another $450 on an incubator, I probably would not choose this one. As good as it is and as highly reviewed as it is, my biggest problem with this incubator is the humidity controller. So the mechanism by which this maintains a constant humidity, there is a pump right here, and you put this clear hose down into a water bottle, and it will pump water through this hose and drip it into some collection trays down in the base of this incubator. And in that base, or in those collection trays, there's some sponge media that comes with them. The problem comes when it's having a hard time maintaining that humidity. It does maintain it as far as, I've never had it higher than 70% as far as the setting goes, but it will maintain that humidity. The problem is it will overflow these collection areas down in the base, and you'll end up with what is essentially a flooded incubator. The floor will have water on the bottom, and when your chicks first hatch, they typically they're going to lay their head down and sleep a large part of the time for the first couple days while they dry out. And having that puddled water in the bottom of this incubator was a real concern of mine, and I could not remedy that from happening. Now this incubator, on the other hand, is my lockdown incubator. It does not have the automatic humidity control that this one does. This is all manual. You have plugs on the front and back, which you use to add water. I use a turkey baster, use whatever you have handy. And then it also has plugs in the top, which you can pull to release humidity out of the incubator to lower the humidity. So this takes a little bit of playing, but it didn't take long for me to figure this incubator out. And I can keep the humidity in a range that I'm very comfortable with pretty easily now. Now one thing this incubator, the Brincy incubator, has that this one doesn't, is this one has a temperature controller where you can set your own temperature for incubation. Whereas this one is factory set at 100 degrees, so you cannot change it. Now 100 degrees is perfect, in my opinion, for chickens. So unless you're hatching some other type of egg, quail, duck, or something that may require a different temperature, the 100 degree setting on this one and not being able to change it, I don't know that I would even consider that a negative, but it is not adjustable. This incubator does come with a turning tray that slips into the bottom of the incubator. I have never used it. This is only a lockdown incubator for me, so I've never used that tray, and I've never used this for the first 18 days of an incubation cycle. I would say, just based on looking at the two, the turning mechanism in the Brinsea is far superior to the turning mechanisms in the Farm Innovations, which you would expect considering this one costs $300 to $350 more than this incubator. Now the Brinsea also has a lot of other settings which are customizable, which this one doesn't. So you can do a lot of things with this. You can get different size trays for different types of eggs, for quail, for duck, for larger breeds of chickens or bantams. So this does have a lot of options and features that this one doesn't, and it is a very high quality incubator. But as I said, I'm not happy with the lockdown phase of this incubator where it overfills the collection cup and floods out onto the base where the chicks hatch and they lay their heads. Now traditionally, a lot of people believe that 40 to 50% humidity for the first 18 days was the best route to go. Now that belief is starting to change as more and more people move to dry incubation for the first 18 days. I used to try to keep 40 to 50% humidity, and I did have success doing that, but I've had as much if not more success with dry incubation. And with dry incubation, if it's just as successful, which actually I believe it's even, my hatch rates are a little higher now, but the huge plus is that you no longer have to worry about adding water and maintaining a certain humidity inside your incubator for the first 18 days, which alleviates some of that maintenance. Now that humidity could change based on the breed of chickens, such as a dwarf or bantam breed sometimes do better, I find, with a lower humidity during lockdown. By that I mean instead of 60 to 70, I might go 50 to 60. So the breed of chicken and the size of the egg can be a factor, but a good rule of thumb ballpark figure is 60 to 70% humidity during lockdown. So you've added your eggs to the incubator. The next thing you're going to want to do is candle them. I typically candle on day 7, and I'll candle again on day 12, 13, 14, somewhere around in there. I'm not real strict on what day I candle, but I want to see an overall loss by the time they go into lockdown of about 13% of their weight is what I want to see them go down to, which means that my humidity was good. If they're heavier than that, it was a little too wet during the first 18 days. If they're lighter than that, yeah, it could have been too dry, but I'm not going to add water and try to adjust humidity during that first 18 days anyway, because like I said, I dry incubate. What I could do is move my incubator out into my garage, which is not climate controlled, and that would probably bump that humidity up just a little bit naturally without me having to. So when I candle, the critical day of candling for me is day 10. Day 7, I want to see some veining. I want to see something happening inside that egg. I don't want it to light up like a light bulb, which means it's bad, and I go ahead and kick it out right away. But on day 10, what I really want to see, I want to see movement inside that egg. So day 10, 11, 12, if I don't see movement, even if I see a little bit of a dark spot in there, I need to see movement for me to keep that egg. So that's the critical thing for me as far as candling goes, is seeing movement on days 10, 11, or 12. Okay, so here's a really good example of an egg that I'm candling that's about 11 days old. And what I want you to focus on is that black embryo inside the egg. And you can see it's moving. There's a lot of movement. So this is a really good egg. It's viable, it's lively. And that's what I'm looking for on days 10 through 12, is that movement right there. If I don't see that movement, then it's a red flag for me. I might give it a couple extra days to see if anything changes, but otherwise I'm probably not going to keep that egg in my incubator and use up the space. I'm going to go ahead and remove the egg and assume it's not viable. You can also see along the top up here the egg sac, or the air sac. So what you can do is draw a circle at the different stages of candling to see if this egg sac is shrinking, or I'm sorry, not shrinking, expanding, which it should be as the egg dries out. So I don't do that. A lot of people do, but it's an option. But I just wanted to show you an example of this black area and its movement and what I look for during candling. Okay, so you've canned your eggs, everything's looking good. Now it's really just a matter of waiting till day 18 and getting your eggs moved, either moved to your lockdown incubator, or if you're running one incubator, it's time to go ahead and add your water, adjust your humidity setting, and get that humidity up to where you want it. Again, 65% is a nice rule of thumb. If it gets down to 60, I think you're fine. If it gets up to 70, I think you're fine. Assuming that air sac is growing and expanding at a good rate and you have the correct weight loss. Okay, so your eggs are now in lockdown. It's day 19. Lockdown means exactly that. It means that you've locked down your incubator and it's not going to be opened unless it is an absolute emergency, such as an egg exploding or something bad, something goes wrong and you need to get into your incubator. But one thing you have to know is when you open your incubator, you have a sudden drop in humidity. And that sudden drop in humidity, even if it only lasts for a very short period of time, can actually what's called shrink wrap your chicks. So that being said, now's a good time to talk about the two things that can kill your chicks during development, and that is drowning and shrink wrapping. Drowning is just that. It means the air sac didn't grow and your eggs didn't lose the proper amount of moisture, and your embryos or your chickens simply drown in their own fluids. The next thing that could happen is called shrink wrapping, and that happens when the humidity is too low and the membrane under the shell dries out too much and it gets rubbery, and the chick cannot pip through the rubbery membrane. It could also shrink around the chick, hence the term shrink wrap, and prevent it from being able to spin and pip its way all the way around the shell so that the bottom falls off and it can fall out. So those are the two scenarios we're trying to avoid during incubation. The drowning usually occurs from mistakes made during the first 18 days of incubation and it not drying out enough, whereas shrink wrapping usually takes place during the last 3 days where the humidity is not high enough to allow that membrane to stay nice and moist where that chick can pip its way out and it doesn't shrink wrap around it and the chick can move freely. Now that brings us to another topic which is hotly debated among a lot of people, and that's rescuing chicks. By that I mean you see a chick that's pipped its way out, maybe it's created a hole, maybe it's made it halfway around the egg, whatever the case may be, and a period of time passes and you're starting to feel like the chick's not going to make it. And you have the urge to go in there and help the chick. I do rescue chicks on occasion, especially my rare breeded chicks, which are very expensive, and I really want success with those hatches. But there are some conditions that have to be met in order for me to rescue a chick. So one scenario where I will rescue a chick and help it hatch is if I'm on day 21 or 22 and I see that a chick has pipped and it either pipped a hole or it made it a small, maybe just a little ways around the egg, maybe a quarter of the way around. If it stays in that same spot for 24 hours and I see no progression, I will go in there and try to help the chick. If I see that its beak is still moving behind that membrane, if I see no movement, sometimes what I'll do is I'll reach in very quickly, grab the egg, pull it out, close the incubator, and I'll put it to my ear and I'll just tap on it. You should hear some chirping if that chick is in there and it's still trying to work its way out. If I hear no chirping, I see no movement, then I'll go ahead and open the egg up and see what happens. But a lot of times that just means that the chick gave out and didn't survive the hatching process. So one thing you do have to ask yourself before you even think about rescuing a chick out of its egg is about half the time, maybe even a little more than that, the chick is not going to be viable. It's simply too weak to get out of the egg. It didn't fully develop, and you have to be prepared to cull that chick and put it out of its misery if you're going to attempt rescues. Now that's something that is extremely unpleasant, and a lot of people simply do not want to do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if that is the case, you probably shouldn't try to rescue your chicks, because you're probably going to end up with a lot of chicks who are suffering needlessly while you try to save them. And some chicks simply cannot be saved. You can't save them all. So you do what you can for the ones you can save, and then you do the humane thing and you cull the ones that you can't save. So your chicks have started to hatch, and you have a couple in the bottom of your incubator, and there are others waiting to hatch, and you have this urge to reach in there and grab the baby chicks and pull them out. You want to put them in a brood box, you want to hold them, you want to see them. Try to resist the urge to do that. The reason being, by opening up that incubator, removing those chicks, you're putting the other unhatched eggs at risk of drying out too quickly from the sudden drop in humidity, and you could shrink wrap those chicks, and you could lose some simply because you didn't want to wait and to get those chicks out. When the chicks do hatch, they have 72 hours where they can survive without food or water. So don't feel like you need to pull your chick out and get food and water to it very quickly. You have plenty of time to allow those other eggs to hatch, if they're going to, before you open your incubator and pull your chicks out. And you also want to allow those chicks to dry out. They're going to get really cold really fast if you pull them out and they're still wet. So let them stay in your incubator, let them dry out. If you have a spike in humidity, then in this one what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pull one of these tops or both of them off, because those wet chicks can sometimes cause a spike in humidity. Now, if you do want to take a chick out for whatever reason, that spike in humidity after they hatch is your window of opportunity to quickly open that lockdown incubator and pull that chick and then get it closed right back up. And what you'll probably see is, I've seen the humidity spike to as high as 85% with 2 or 3 chicks that are wet, that are drying out. And that's a good opportunity to pull them out if you need to pull one. If you see splayed leg or something wrong with one, that's your time to do it. So take advantage of it if you absolutely have to get a chick out of the incubator. Okay, so you have your chicks, everything's hatched, or you've taken some out, whatever the case may be, and now it's time to get them into the brood box and give them all the things they need to grow up to be big, healthy chickens. So that's going to be the next video. If you liked this video, please subscribe and like, and I'm going to start the next one, and keep watching, and we'll talk about getting them in the brood box and getting them set up. Thanks for watching. Bye.